Hey, had a question about not even it wasn't even a question. It was just a conversation about not feeling like a client was making progress, and so we started to look at some numbers, and that's kind of what spawned this video of what is successful in terms of a weekly weight loss. And I think this is important because if we have what is if we have some numbers that kind of guide us in terms of this is successful or this isn't being successful, then it can remove some of that frustration. Because if we feel like we should be losing 4 pounds and we only lost 2 pounds, well, that can be frustrating, and that frustration can then lead to some bad things happening. So, what is an acceptable rate of weight loss as we go through kind of that dieting phase, right? If that's what we're in. And so in general, we're shooting for 0.5 to 1% a week. Within that framework, if we're within kind of those numbers, and some are a little higher and some are a little bit lower depending on how much you need to lose. But if we're within those numbers, it's at a pace that's slow enough that we can be fairly sure that we're not losing muscle mass. And that is a key, because one of the reasons that people do end up regaining weight or regaining even more weight is that we will, if we lose muscle, try to get that muscle back. And so some of that weight regain is the body trying to get back to, its baseline in terms of muscle mass. And so as we build muscle, we will also end up building fat because or storing fat, because we're just going to naturally be eating more than we probably needed. And so some of that weight gain will be muscle and some of that weight gain will be fat. So if we do it slowly, slow is the name of the game in terms of sustainability. So that 0.5 to that 1%. So based off of how much you currently weigh will give you an idea of what is acceptable weight loss, right? So because if I'm 250 pounds, or let's just make the math easy, 200 pounds, that, when you Google weight loss, that 1 to 2 pounds per week is kind of what you typically see. Well, that 1 to 2 pounds works if you're 200 pounds. Okay, but if I weigh 125 pounds and I'm targeting this 2 pounds per week, and I'm only getting 1 pound a week, that can cause frustration. So I wanted to help clarify where you're at and what your goals should be, so that you don't go down that road of frustration. So you can just see 125, you're looking at, call it 0.5 to 1.25 pounds per week. Obviously, the more you weigh, the more actual weight you will lose. Okay. So one thing to note as we go through this, though, is that as you lose weight, those numbers will also change. So your rate of weight loss will start to level out. The other big thing to be aware of is that early on, that first month, those first 3 to 4 to 5 weeks don't necessarily tell us a ton, because what you'll typically see initially is that food quality increases, calories decrease. As that food quality increases, we're not having processed foods. We're usually not having as many carbs. We're usually having a little bit more on the protein side. We're increasing vegetable and fiber content. And so those first 3 to 5 weeks, we might see, depending on the person, we might see large drops initially in weight loss, right? So we might see a big drop. So maybe this is the first month. So that's month one. And we're seeing an increased rate of weight loss that may be outside of that 0.5 to that 1% per week. That first month doesn't tell us a ton because of all the other things that are going on, and water content and how we're storing these things. After that, now we want to really be targeting that 0.5 to that 1%. Okay, so the key is finding consistency in that first month and then seeing what happens after that. Okay, I think a lot of people struggle with this very first month and the weeks that maybe follow that first month, because it's motivating to see this big drop initially, and it's frustrating to see this thing level out a little bit. And you might still be losing half a pound a week, but it's not what you were losing before. And for the people who are just getting into this, not understanding, one, how those percentages work, but two, understanding that that first month is really creating a baseline. Now we get into that week 5, week 6, week 7, and we're trying to make adjustments before we need to make adjustments. Okay, and either that is cutting calories too low again, which ultimately, if we continue to cut calories over and over and over again, we're going to end up naturally over consuming at times, right? Our bodies are just going to continue to tell us you're hungry, you're going to feel starving, right? And so we want to avoid going down that road. So my advice is understand what is kind of your framework, where are your borders at in terms of weight loss, but then also giving yourself that month to find baseline, and then the next month, the next couple of weeks are going to give you more consistent information and more reliable information on if you do need to make an adjustment or not. Okay, don't jump the gun in week 4, week 5. Give yourself some time. Let yourself adapt. You're going to have much better numbers, much better consistency if you've built up that framework, if you've built up that first month, and then you stick with it for a little while. And if week 7, week 8, you see that, okay, my rate of weight loss is not within what I'm shooting for, now you can be pretty confident that you do need to make an adjustment. Okay, and what does that adjustment look like? Well, again, just to make the math easy, let's say I'm targeting 1 pound a week, but I'm only losing half a pound in week 8, let's just say, okay, at a time where we've kind of gotten out of this first initial baseline phase. Well, that math's pretty easy. If I'm losing a pound a week, I'd be theoretically burning 3,500 calories more than I'm consuming. If I'm only losing half a pound a week, we just divide that by 2, and then we can space that out over the course of the week. So we can safely assume that I would need to then decrease an extra 250 calories, okay? Or you're losing too fast and you need to increase 250 calories, okay? So at that point, it becomes a lot easier to make logical decisions based off of your results. All right, so hopefully that helps you kind of clarify what is a good rate of weight loss for me based off of my own weight. And hopefully it also gives you a little bit of peace of mind to say and to expect even, hey, that rate is gonna slow down after that initial baseline phase. Okay. And really the challenge becomes finding consistency in that first month to set yourself up for success in the weeks to follow.